edition of the GASOCAST. I'm your host, Ryan Massett. I'm joined by Michael Timmons and Blueser Tucci. We just wrapped up the regional quarterfinals last night. We're going to jump right to it by paying some respects to some of the best 2022, the best seniors that have been eliminated up to this point. Everybody picked a couple dudes, and we're going to jump right in. Blue, I'm going to pass it to you.
Well, I think the first one right here is going to be Cason Wallace, followed by Rylan Griffin. I mean, even last night when you're looking at the footage that Timmons made of the game, how does Cason Wallace get eliminated from that game? By trying to make a defensive stop. And we've talked about his defense, him being a gamer, all the tools that he brings out to the game to play, and he's always ready. It was a simple try to, he makes a block, tips the ball in the air, him and Jacoby Walters, and it just lands in Alex Anamekwe's hands for the easy put in. And that's the way he leaves the court. Also with Rylan Griffin, these two dynamic duo guys, they made it to state last year. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they were not in San Antonio, where the entire state, where the basketball junkies live and die every March. To see these guys, to see Cason, Rylan Griffin, see Kevin Lawson on the sidelines coaching, that was never came to be. And I think that these two guys will be well missed. I think that they meant a lot to high school basketball over the last 4 years and rack up the wins and everything that they accomplished.
They really put on – every time you went to see them, they never disappointed.
Oh, absolutely not.
And that was what's really special, when we – it's just high school kids are inconsistent as players in general just because they're in high school. But when you would go to see Cason and Rylan, it was just like you knew what you were getting, and that's a rare attribute.
Yeah, for me, Ryan Agarwal at Coppell, I picked him just because, the history that he has in high school as well as at the GASO. For me, filming often, there were games where he would have double-digit three-point shots. If he hit two in a row, the heat check was coming. Just one of my favorite players to cover. Just the pure stroke at 6'6", and just to kind of see him grow over the 3 years that I covered him, build into a frame, add so many dimensions to his game. While I'm sad that, I won't be able to cover him in high school anymore, headed to Stanford, he has a bright future ahead of him. And it was just somebody that at the purest form, a shot maker, was somebody that I really was interested in covering that I'm going to miss.
And if I may add, I mean, his senior year was cut a little bit short with his injury. I think that he was showing that he could lead a team as the main focal point, along with his teammates beside him. And then it was cut a little short, and I think he came back to really try to fight through for his senior night, and then in the playoffs you can only go so far. And right. I think that Ryan just he was heading in a different direction upward this year.
I want to talk about Austin Nunez. He is a player that has just continued to grow on me immensely, and you've seen the maturation process. He was always very talented, but just like the way he competes and the way he battles, like I just loved it. There was a great picture of him after they lost to Westlake, and you could just tell he left everything out there. I got to see him a couple times this year, and he was just really good. I saw him in a loss, and the dude was going so hard trying to find ways to win. I'm going to miss watching him. He's explosive. He had a lot to his game. He was an eye-catching prospect. And then he produced, and then he competed. You got to like all those factors. So
yeah, I spoke to him after the game they lost to Westlake, and just you could hear the maturity in his voice, obviously disappointed, but all he kept talking about was, the fact that his teammates stepped up and they had a chance to win that game. And that's the only way you want to go out is on your shield like that. And for him to lead that Wagner team, who may not have had all the talent that they've had in years past, for them to will their way that far and had Westlake on the ropes, That's the way you want to go out if you're going to go out. And, as we head down this path into the state tournament, we find out very quickly that there's going to be only one winner in these classifications. So, winning's hard. But, these three guys that we talk about here, there's plenty more, but just a couple of guys who want to spotlight and give them their due.
And with Austin Nunez, he missed a year because of transfer rules, and he sat out. And in that meantime of sitting out, he got better.
Yeah.
And I think he turned the corner during his senior year for us that we saw. And then in 1 year at being at Wagner, he carried on that tradition of winning.
Yeah.
At Wagner for Rodney Clark, for the head coach there. And in 1 year, you just kind of see how, you thought that he was there fighting for the T-Birds his entire career.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. Seemed a little somber. It was. We were saying goodbye to some of our favorites. But last night was absolutely absurd. I'll start here at GASO headquarters in Keller, Texas.
Well, let me say this though. I leave for 12 hours to go on a JUCO trip, and it was like the dam broke in high school basketball in one night.
It was incredible. Sam and I got about 3 subscriptions to Dave Campbell's Texan Live, and we decided we were going to watch all of Houston last night. And we did. I had a thread that was 18 tweets long. Sam and I, at the end of the night, looked at each other, and we said, let's go take some Tylenol because we both have headaches. But we saw some incredible basketball. Just to mention a few, Wesley Yates and Terrence Arsenault of Beaumont United, they beat Goose Creek Memorial. Spectacular performance. Terrence Arsenault doing what Terrence Arsenault does. And Wesley Yates putting the ball in the bucket. Absolutely incredible. And I want to give a shout-out to Sam Bradford, who was really, really good in the fourth quarter and overtimes, and Darius Whitson. Bel Air versus Cy Creek, that was another one we got our eyes on. And Jacoby Cole was phenomenal, hitting threes, pull-up jumpers, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, causing turnovers, wrecking havoc. And he was the star of the night in that game last night. And then last one, HP, Mount Pleasant. Peyton Chisholm, a really good point guard out of Mount Pleasant, hits a buzzer beater to beat Highland Park.
Yeah, the way he split through that defense right there and
incredible.
then to stay on balance and not panic after he made that move was big time.
Yeah. And I'll also just say, I know we didn't get to everything, but like that's just the tip of the iceberg
And
of
it
what happened last
and
night.
it happened like this. Like as soon as you thought you were locked in on one, I know y'all had trouble getting back and forth between games that were going down to the wire.
Yeah.
But
and we had 3 screens going,
Yeah.
and we had group threads, and it was last night was a blast.
How great was it? It was March 1st, and all of this happened. You're sitting up on the TV screens. You're showing me what I'm missing, and even though I did enjoy my time at Region 14 JUCO, but even on our GASO bracket breakdown on our Twitter page at Texas Hoops GASO, I remember you asked me what I was looking forward to for Tuesday night, and it was Region 3.
Oh.
And Region 3, I think on both ends, delivered the dramatics of everything that was going on in the games from start to finish, and I think that's what high school is all about. It's unpredictable. We made some picks. We were wrong, so what? This is what high school basketball is about.
And when you don't mention Cy Falls, Shadow Creek, Atascocita, it just shows you how insane last night was.
Right.
It's all 3 winners, all 3 in tough games. I mean, absolutely nuts.
For me, I was at Richardson McKinney at Curtis Cole Center. Obviously a very high-profile game, and, I've said it multiple times since playoffs started. It ain't sweet. And to get McKinney and Richardson, who we had as 2 of the top 3 teams in our preseason state ranking, meet in the 3rd round, I mean, you could already feel the buzz, the energy in that gym. I've already posted the YouTube recap, so go check that out. But you could tell it was going to be an instant classic, and it didn't disappoint. Ryland Griffin got off to a start similar to the start that he had versus Arizona Compass when they upset them at the Hoop Fest. But right there to match him early on was Thatcher McClure, which he hit 2 big threes. I think he finished with 3 threes in the first half and in the first quarter and a big dunk. Matched him. But down the stretch, just the toughness of McKinney kind of was the difference in the game. Jackson Steele made big plays in the second half. I didn't talk about him much yesterday, but Alex Anamekwe was playing some point forward. There was obviously the matchup between Kason Wallace and Jacoby Walter. I talked to Jacoby after the game, and I said, whatever it takes to win. Obviously, he really didn't have his best offensive scoring night. Kason Wallace took the challenge and, guarded him well, but Jacoby made plays down the stretch, deflections, getting some extra possessions for his team. And it's just, what does it take to win? And, McKinney was able to pull that win out in an instant classic, and now they're rolling with a lot of momentum after that win.
And I think maybe Wes Watson and the staff are kind of like being in the shadows because they had to start the playoffs early with a district championship game against Denton Guyer, and they didn't win that game, but obviously I think the momentum started building.
Yeah, it sounds like that game was really good for them against Guyer.
Yeah, when you look at it, obviously, there's not an elephant in the room. You really don't want to see Richardson any earlier than they had to, but that's just what happened. But I think, they just started figuring things out, and their role players really stepped up. Jacoby Campbell hit a big shot last night down the stretch. Vincent hit a pull-up. They did everything they needed to hang around, and the toughness in that second half really showed. And we talked about Ryland and Case, and, they did everything they can to try to win that game, and it just, like we talked about, only one team can win the state championship. So, credit to both teams for putting on a classic performance, and I was glad to be there.
Yeah, I'm going to jump over to a little small ball. Small town basketball of 1A with Calvert. Calvert is handling business as they should as they're trying to march to San Antonio, and we're keeping a close eye on MJ Thomas and what he's being able to accomplish. Last night he went for 21 points, 17 rebounds and 5 blocks. Obviously hitting into regionals. There's going to be a lot of eyes on him as we here think. His next step is to get to state, and they got to go through McMullen County, who right now their record is 34-4, and they were 14-0 in district play themselves, and Calvert was undefeated in district play, and so there's a little storylines here. I mean, maybe not so much a recap from last night's game because it was Calvert handled business, like I said, but just like looking, every win for Calvert right now is a big win. And talking to Michael Thomas, he feels a sense of urgency as a head coach to get there.
Yeah, I love it. Let's jump to surprises. These are just going to be, things that happen that we're surprised about, and I wouldn't say there was many upsets, but there are definitely some things that are surprising us through this playoffs. So that's how we're gonna do this next little segment. So I'm gonna kick us off. Duncanville and Kimball are flying way too under the radar. It's eerie how much I am not hearing about them. And, I don't think they're upset about that because, Timmons, you've talked about how in the state playoffs you win, and guess what happens? You're going to get that publicity.
Yeah.
You're going to get opportunities to shine, and that's going to kind of move us into where Timmons is going later down the road, but these two teams are very good.
Yeah, is it just that we expect them to win?
Yes.
Are there
have we given them
that was the expectation.
That much respect? Yeah.
But at the same time, we've talked about, it's hard to win in Texas playoffs. And, seeing a DeSoto team last night for Duncanville, that's your district. You play them in district. It's hard to beat a team 3 times.
Very hard.
Kimball's rolling right now, and I think that they're blowing teams out, but at the same time, they're handling business like you said. I don't think their coaching staff and their team they don't care. They're handling business quietly, advancing, getting wins under their belt, and there they are in the regional tournament.
And last year was kind of like this thing. It's like when Kimball in just about every single round was down double digits, and he looked and they're really going to do this again.
Yeah.
And this year, they haven't none of that. They're just taking care of business.
Yeah.
Which shows a maturation process of some big-time seniors over at Kimball.
And I think the fun part about this, or when you think about it, we're expecting it. So did those coaches. Nick Smith at Kimball, David Peavy at Duncanville, they're expecting to be in San Antonio.
Right.
So they're ones that aren't going to make a lot of noise on anywhere. They're going to coach their teams. And I think, though, with focusing on the Richardsons and the Lake Highlands and Austin Westlakes and everything around the state, what has happened is that, with a couple of those big losses last night, the path maybe gets a little bit easier for Duncanville, which is anybody going to argue if they get an easier if they get challenged and they're able to win? They're not going to complain about winning. And Nick Smith, I've spoken to Nick. Nick Smith expects to be in that championship game. He don't care who it's against.
Right.
So he has unfinished business.
For me, as far as surprises, I think my surprise is just to see the dynamic of Westlake get better. You know, when you think Westlake, you think toughness, you think about knocking down open shots. And I think the emergence of Jaden Grayhouse at that guard position adds just a dynamic that is allowing them to advance against some teams that he was needed to advance against. You know, if you look at their game against Wagner, you have Austin Nunez there, where Jaden Grayhouse had to make it tough for him. Then the next game against Clark, you have Jordan Mason. So two guards that can get going, that Jaden Grayhouse provides, you know, some strength. And also now if you're playing against Westlake, you have to be honest. He can go downhill, and they give him that element of attacking downhill. And his strong frame, he's a nightmare in high school basketball, you know, a fearless competitor on the football field. But he's bringing something to where you can't just say, oh, they have shooters. Now you have to guard a guy that can go ISO and get downhill and put a lot of pressure, get to the free throw line against the defense. And I think right now they're rolling, and they can beat you in multiple ways with him now.
And what you and I talked about earlier is that coming off the football field, he goes, and I see him in his first tournament, and the first time he's in the game during the second half, I mean, what does he do? He dives on the ball dives on the floor for a loose ball, calls a timeout. That's a competitive winning play of instincts,
Yep.
regardless of if you're on the football field or the basketball court. Winning and competitiveness translates.
Absolutely. Blue, surprises for you?
I guess maybe a surprise, not surprise. My sleeper was Bernie Champion, coming into the state tournament. You know, last night they handled Buda Johnson, who was in their district. Braden Baum, the junior, 6'6" junior forward, winds up with 27 points yesterday. Jesse Pert added 10. The scoring kind of went throughout the lineup of who was in there, and they can just share the ball and rely on different people every night. And I guess at this point, when you can tear up your bracket, for what it's worth, I mean, it's kind of fun just to see somebody in there that maybe, you know, hey, I was maybe right about this one, and so they're that's a fun thing to watch with a lot of weapons.
Absolutely. Let's look ahead here. This is going to be the last segment. I'm looking ahead. West Texas versus DFW. Okay, El Paso America has actually beaten two DFW teams in the last 2 rounds.
Yeah, they have.
They beat Byron Nelson, and then they beat Keller Central. Both reside out of the same district. Now they take on Arlington Martin, who very well-rounded team. I cannot wait to attend that game to watch El Paso Americas and Arlington Martin. And then you got Amarillo versus Summit. I got seniored and told I don't get to go to that one. So,
Tough.
that's going to be a great one. Amarillo Summit. I'm very interested to see what happens there. I believe Jeff.
Yes, I was going to add, because I'm looking at your notes here. I'm sorry if I'm jumping on your turf, but El Paso Chapin, West Texas plays Mansfield Timberview.
There you go. That's perfect. I didn't even write that one down. So there you go. West Texas versus DFW. I'm really interested to see that matchup. And then seniority versus youth. You have Atascocita,
Yeah.
and then you have Fort Bend Clements, who's sophomore led. And Fort Bend Clements is really tough. They're very disciplined. It should be a good one as well. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen in that one.
Blue, do we want to go? You want me to go?
I'm looking forward to down the road in 4A to Dallas Faith Family versus a Dallas Carter matchup. Faith Family, as we know, roll through their district. They try to get some work in playing Spring Creek Academy, who's a very talented charter school in the Dallas area. And now they get to bracket play in the playoffs, and they're beating teams on an average of 34 points. Last night, I believe, was 46, 91. Is my math right? 91 to 45. So as they get, I believe,
Pretty good.
Thank you. As we get to, the regional finals, going up against Dallas Carter, a lot of athletes on the court. Anything can happen when you have athletes. Obviously, Faith Family has more size, but quickness on both ends of the court with both teams pressuring. They know each other. They've played
there
each
won't
other
be
in the
any.
past.
There's not going to be intimidation.
No. There's no intimidation, but guess
Yeah.
what? I think both of those coaches, they're. I don't look too far ahead, but that's what they're looking for, and I'm
Right.
looking at that too.
For me, Warren versus Westlake. I just mentioned Westlake with Jaden Grayhouse. Well, Warren's bringing in Jalen Crocker Johnson, who's putting up 20 games. So the matchup there, I'm going to look to see how does Westlake, take him out of the game, or how can they adjust and, neutralize him. And like I said with Warren, how do you stop Jaden Grayhouse, who's rolling, as well as guarding the shooters, and as well as, matching the toughness that's what Westlake has. And then I will be front and center. I got involved in a tweet yesterday talking about nobody's really talking about Big Zuby. And, there's been a lot of big matchups, and Zuby's putting up huge numbers. And the one thing I'll say with that, when
like
people
30 and 20 numbers.
like huge numbers. So what I'll say about that is that when you keep winning matters. And guess what? The more you win, like now we're forced to see you're on the big stage, you're in the regional tournament, and Zuby versus JoJo Tugler of Cy Falls is must watch basketball. They both run the floor. They're both physical inside. That's just going to be two dudes going at it, and I'm really excited for that matchup. So that's something I'm looking forward to this weekend.
I'll be there with you on Friday.
And then also just taking a look down there, there's some very intriguing matchups at TAPS that are going to be in Waco, with some potential to have some really big-time matchups that, GASO is going to try to get down there to see as well. So looking at that.
Absolutely. Make sure that you are following us, okay, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. We got our newsletter. It's coming out Friday. 2024 rankings will be released. We have 105 players on that. NIL information, building your brand, and then players that we've seen. We've just wrote a ton of notes, lots of players in there, tons of rabbit holes to keep you busy for like hours. And then we're updating the brackets. The regional tournament will be up on Great American Shootout website here soon. And, yeah, that's how you can get all your information. So thank you for listening. Comment below. Any feedback, any mailbag questions, we'd love to answer them. And we'll be back next week
With recapping a lot of action from over the weekend.
A lot of action, and then we'll be headed down to San Antonio.
Yep.
Can't wait for that. So hopefully try and do one down there as well. So that's going to wrap us up. Have a good day.